Welcome to America's Voices, where we bring Americans together from across the political spectrum to go underneath the headlines and discuss what truly matters. I'm your host, Daniella Bloom. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to the second episode of America's Voices. I am so glad you guys are all here. This call / soon-to-be podcast was kind of created to fill a need. After the inauguration, I felt like unity could not be further and the echo chambers could not be more defined. And I wanted to get back to basics by bringing Americans together from across the political spectrum to go underneath the headlines to talk about what matters to us and why, without it being a conversation of defense, offense, defense. We can actually talk about the issues with our own experiences, our own voices, without it being filtered. We can actually represent our own points of view, and we need this now more than ever. So again, welcome to the call. We are going to go around and introduce ourselves. If you want to say your name, where you're from, and your political affiliation, and what topics you're excited to talk about this evening. So let's start with Iris.
My name is Iris, and I live in Aventura, Florida. That's North Miami. What do I want to talk about? I think a great topic is what's going on here in Florida right now with Ron DeSantis trying to take down big tech. I think that's an interesting subject if we want to talk about that. I don't know. I mean, I've basically throughout COVID have become engulfed in politics, and so I'm ready to talk about anything, really.
Yes. You're here because you care.
Always. I was brought up a Democrat. I grew up a Democrat, and I became, I was independent for a few years, and then I became a Republican. But I think the Republican Party to me is very much like what Democrats used to be like. So, you know.
I love it. It's honest, and I'm sure we're going to get into it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yuval, are you ready?
I am.
Okay, welcome.
So I'm Yuval. Generally, politically, I present myself as a libertarian because I'm very, very, very liberal on social issues, but I am conservative on foreign affairs and economy. So I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't really see myself a pure Republican, but I just go by policy. And a lot of the libertarian policies are being implemented in the last administration. So I kind of go by that. One of the things that right these days mostly bother me is the issue of election integrity. So that's the most thing that bothers me, because I think that this whole thing is so wide open, and also it really bothers me that there's no uniform way of conducting election across the country, which makes it, to my opinion, very unfair when one state can do something and another state cannot do it. It's just, it's very uneven, unequal, and unfair. So,
So it doesn't feel stable.
It doesn't feel, fair, fair and free and fair.
Free and fair. Okay. So is that what's pressing for you today the most?
Oh, well, this is one of the most pressing future and current issues. I mean, if I have to make a list, it will be a very long one, but yes. This is very recent, so.
Yes. Okay, thank you for sharing. All right. Mark, what about you?
Oh, wow. I thought I'd be last. No, I'm just kidding. I'm Mark. I'm originally from New York, then California, and now reside in Las Vegas. I'm kind of a fiscal Republican / libertarian, but a Democrat in terms of social policy. So I'm kind of a mixed bag. Mm-hmm. I guess for me, a lot of this has to do with the integrity of not just our voting system, as Yuval pointed out, but the integrity of our entire government system, whether they be Republican or Democrat. I think when we look at any of our leaders, they lack any kind of integrity. And we always are second guessing what they say, reading between the lines. I think the biggest thing we need to do is try to figure out how to get back to a government that is moral, ethical, and has integrity.
Mhm. Yes.
I agree to that 100%.
Yes. I think that's one of the biggest problems is,
I think I heard the phrase today, we should be in the era of accountability since it's so lacking.
yes, I think we can all agree to that.
And transparency.
Yeah. And full story, full coverage of, all the facts, not some of the facts. I love that. And I think accountability we can't go anywhere without accountability. It's same thing with relationships. When I work with couples who are struggling, you can't go anywhere without acknowledging where you are, so you don't repeat the same patterns. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, Sean, are you ready? You're on mute. Are you ready to join us? Okay. Yes.
All right, I'm back.
Yay. Okay, so introduce yourself again.
All right, so my name is Sean, and I'm from California, and I'm a Christian. I'm a registered Republican, and my main goal for being on this call is to talk to Democrats also, and to try to find some common ground of how we can work together.
Yeah.
Pretty much, there's so much anger on both sides. I have people that I care about and are even Christians and have so much anger and rage towards Trump that it just made me realize that even though here's a Christian brother of mine, he's so strongly opposed to Donald Trump, my president. And I just need to understand a little bit more. Honestly, I can't really even talk to him about it because it just goes nowhere. It's and I think that's so true. There's so much anger on both sides that it's really baffling me on how we can work together. But I think there has to be. So that's my goal. Hopefully, we can reach some common ground and push the anger. And I noticed the anger in me too. I have anger, and how are we supposed to ever, reach common ground or make any progress together if we're, both so angry?
Yes. And that is exactly why I was motivated to start from grassroots, because we are all human beings. We are all Americans first. And if we're blinded by emotion, we can't really come up with resolution or solution. And that's why this is an invitation for open-minded Americans from across the political spectrum who just want to connect and share and maybe take away perspectives that they didn't consider before. Because when our country is the strongest when our moderate voice has a platform, and there's no moderates today. It's like almost we have to choose sides. So thank you so much, Sean, for sharing.
You're welcome.
David, welcome to the call again.
Thanks. I will kind of go with what I said last week, which is I like to think of myself as an independent moderate, but I'm kidding myself. I'm actually a pretty strong Democrat. So I see through my veneer of lying to myself about that.
Yeah.
I'm here because I think it's important. Not necessarily, I mean, it's funny, common ground is kind of a weird definition, but to get out of the bubble. I mean, we're so in our circles and our things and so self-congratulatory and you get just the self-support, and it kind of builds those walls where you see there's two different worlds going on. So to me, it's important to just have the dialogue to see where people are coming from, to see what the issues are, and to try to get back to a common fact, at least start with a fact pattern and then get to ground.
Yes. Amen. When I work with individuals and they come and they telling me about these horrendous stories about their mother-in-law or their husband or their children, and I finally am able to encourage them to bring those people into therapy, and they've been made out to be such monsters, and you meet them and you're like, wow, you're nothing like I thought you were.
I mean, one of my greatest pet peeves, certainly in any conversation, is when people say, well, the right does this and all the left on that, where all the Democrats want this and all. There's not this big massive body that works in conjunction all together with a gray line. I mean, how many times all the Jews hate this, all the Jews love that? No, we're all individuals. We're all on that spectrum somewhere, but it's easy to dive into, no, everybody is against me or everybody's against that. And that's my argument, which becomes an impossible thing to argue because it's not grounded.
Exactly. And so thank you so much for coming. I just wanted to share for our listeners, in case they were curious about where I stand politically. I also consider myself a centrist, moderate. I was moderate, center-leaning left. I voted for Obama twice. I had the audacity of hope twice. And since moving back to California, I've walked on over to becoming center-right. And like Mark, I'm more socially liberal, fiscally conservative, but a very, very proud patriot. From our last call last week, we did find common ground. And the common ground we did really all agree on is that the media has an agenda. It has an audience it caters to. We also agreed on unions being too powerful. The police and the teachers' unions are just two examples of this. I think there was a consensus on a lot of issues that are issues of disadvantage today might be more of a class issue, not necessarily a race issue. And the other thing that we talked about, which we had a majority of consensus on, I know, David, you were not for it, was term limits and how politicians should be elected to serve and to not make a career, because that could perpetuate favors and disingenuine desires. So there was a lot of common ground. That's not, and I hope that happens in this call too. More importantly, though, everyone is entitled to an opinion, but this is not the forum to impose opinions. It's to just talk about and educate why something matters to you, bring the information that you want to share, and to have a dialogue about it, have a conversation about it, because we all have different things that are important to us. With that said, then I think let's go to Florida. We've had to address, we have to talk about free speech today, and private companies and censorship like we've never had to before. So that's a topic that speaks closely to my heart. Are you guys comfortable diving into that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. So
absolutely.
absolutely. So Iris, do you want to share a little bit? Can you recall some of the highlights of Mr. DeSantis?
Yes. Well, basically, he's suing big tech. We're the first state to do it. And
the grounds specifically, what the
well, he's basically for people that have businesses here in Florida, if they get censored because of their political views or anything that they say, you know, just like Mike Lindell, who was now just completely abolished from everything. So what Ron DeSantis is trying to do is to make sure this does not happen to anybody here in the state of Florida. So he's going against tech. Now, if this works, then every other state will want to do this too. And it's going to protect, they can't censor, they can't stop you from expressing your thoughts, your views, to have a business. Why would they want, you know, why should they have the right to cancel everything? You know, it just makes no sense to me. You know, I remember with the woman in San Francisco who had the hair salon, and Nancy Pelosi, when the poor woman had to shut down her business. I mean, this is ridiculous. Things like this should not happen in America. And it gets me very, 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 very angry. This is probably what kills me the most, is the censorship of what's going on. It just, sometimes I'm like,
yeah, I don't know what politics has to do with pillows, what politics has to do
yeah, you know, I mean, thank God Mike Lindell is probably doing better because he reduced all his prices, he said, because he doesn't have to mark up the prices for the retailers anymore.
Yeah.
So, you know, it worked maybe to his benefit, but a lot of the small companies, they can't afford to survive. So imagine, you know, a hair salon here in Florida, he or she advertises, and, you know, they don't like something that they said politically. They can just completely ban her from ever, advertising and having a Instagram page or a Twitter page thing or whatever. I think that should be illegal. That shouldn't happen.
Let me just say, you brought up two very different arguments. One is the power of big tech and censorship, and the other is censorship of people doing stuff. Because I look at the woman the hair salon, nobody stopped her. People stopped her. People reacted. That wasn't big tech stopping her.
No, but it would have been eventually.
I don't want to hear would have been, could have been, should have been. Let's go by what actually happened.
Okay, so I gave one example, but there's many examples that people have been shut down for things that they said on.
Okay, so I think what David's point is there's two different arguments here. There's cancel culture and the influence of big tech suppression.
But I think one ties into the other too. I feel like it's censoring a person.
But on the flip side, one, we have control. One, you're fighting big tech for. The other has happened from probably the first day of somebody saying, Joe smeared the sheep, I'm not going to buy from him, and I'm going to tell my friends. I mean, it's just being done differently, but I think people don't, ever since I was a kid, they're boycotting Nestle. They were feeding milk to babies in Africa that was wrong. Or there's always been a boycott and vote your way and vote with your pocketbook or control people with pocketbook.
But do you agree now that it's much easier to get the word out through big tech?
Big tech, friends or family, but is that the fault of big tech, or is big tech doing us a favor by letting us know?
I don't know if it's doing us a favor. I think there is something to be said when Twitter gets hold of a emotional story piece, whether or not it's even true. And it is so easy to rally the troops in hate and boycott, and and when it starts to affect businesses and careers unfairly, so that is concerning. It is.
But how you just said the word unfairly?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I agree. It's David, right?
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, because that can work on the flip side too. That could work on what if conservatives found something that we really didn't like and the word got out. I see where you're coming from on that, David.
Right. I mean, big tech. Yeah. Sorry, Mark.
I think it can be separated. David's point is excellent. Big tech is a conduit. It is a way for people to communicate. How they communicate is a personal issue, cancel culture, and everything else. But when big tech puts the guns to the pipeline, that's where the problem emanates from.
Yeah, maybe they're getting involved themselves instead of just letting the people, like you said, getting the word out. It's it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So getting back to Ron DeSantis, he's trying to just protect the people in the state of Florida from these things happening to them.
Well, I think it's good because, and I'll start it out, because big tech shouldn't be a censorship. Now, I realize these are private companies. They have the right to serve or not serve anyone they want. But as they're protected from they become more of a newspaper or a conduit of information. As a conduit of information, I want to know everything that's out there. There are people who still believe the earth is flat. There is a flat earth society, I kid you not. Okay? But should we cancel them? Should big tech say it's not true? No.
But when big tech does say it, and it doesn't allow other people to speak and say, no, but it's round,
Then there becomes a point of religion. Suppose big tech decides that no religion is what we should do. Then the Christians, the Jews, whoever will be censored from using the platform. Once you start down that slippery slope of censorship, your morality or social morality on it, it becomes a very dangerous slide.
Yeah. Hey, David, can I say something? I really see where you're coming from, David. Just getting the word out on both sides, because I would be passionate on my side too. But censoring on their platforms is one thing, but not allowing us to have our platforms or another platform, that doesn't seem fair at all. Can you address that?
Taking down Parler, you mean?
Yeah, like, okay, hey, you know what? We're not gonna, and I think that's what they say. We're not gonna allow this on our platform and our system. Okay. And if you want it, start your own. Okay. But then Parler and Rumble and all these, I mean, now we don't even have a voice. So we can't even get our own word out. What's that about?
Yeah,
Dave,
David,
can you
tell us what you feel about that one?
Yeah. First, I'll start off by going, hey, I have no inside news and I don't know that information, and I'm sure we're only being fed snippets. So from what I do know, it's a term and condition issue. They don't want violence or hate the same way 4chan and other groups have been blocked off platforms. If Parler did a better job policing their people who were doing stuff, it's a terms and service agreement. So, I mean, I looked at it going, Amazon, I mean, and this is just from what I read, so I haven't really checked it out, but if they were warned dozens and dozens of times, you can't have this kind of speech go on. I mean, there's been plenty of other message platforms that have been taken down for very good reason. What's wrong with child pornography? If it's just a conduit.
Yeah, but you can't compare child pornography to saying that the election was a fix. That's two different things.
I'm not worried.
Parler was taken down because they said that they kept saying that the election, even though people were saying the election was a fraud, and a lot of people thought
my
that.
point is we're drawing, and so my first argument, just on an argumentative level, you're okay with drawing a line somewhere. Then we all are.
David, the line should be drawn in where the law.
Right, and their law was that right, but they.
Pornography, certain level of violence, incitement for murder. There are things that are within the law illegal, you know?
Right. And if they thought there was an incitement wouldn't an incitement of violence do that?
Sorry?
Wouldn't incitement of violence, saying I'm going to kill somebody, would that
So you mean when, so let me ask you a question. So when Maxine Waters said she wanted to take Trump out, how come nobody arrested her?
I'm not going to care. Let's stay on the topic because we could always bring up all these little points, but let's stick with the big tech.
Agreed.
If the terms and the conditions were actually applied evenly, it would have been a different story. But surprisingly, hundreds of companies that are hosting on Amazon don't do any of the terms of conditions, meaning that they have posts and they have all those things that they consider unacceptable as speech, and Amazon did not kill them.
So I mean, once again, I look at it going, it's the back end. There's other places to go. I'm surprised that they haven't been able to find another cloud service to do it, except out of Russia, because it is international. But I also look at, hey.
That's another good point, David, that all the other companies are basically boycotting them just because they're affiliated with conservatives.
But I don't buy that every internet group in the world is somehow shockingly liberal. But
yes, they are.
No,
I think there's also fear, though. There's also fear they might not be, but they're just fear of just not wanting to get involved.
You think there's a cloud service out of India has a care?
But they're not the ones who'd censor.
That's what I'm saying. Parler could
Twitter
go on them.
censors.
It's an international internet.
Twitter censors, Facebook censors.
Right. And
Instagram censors, not the cloud. The cloud can't censor.
Right. But you're talking Amazon. You were saying they were being knocked off Amazon.
Amazon, no, the owner of Amazon. Bezos.
Until he stepped down.
Well, he
He did step down. Yes, he just stepped down.
It's
right,
a public
but here's my question, and I'll come from the Democrat versus Republican old line theory, private versus public. I always think in my back of my mind, Republicans want companies to have as much power as they can, no government regulation.
Not true. That's not what the Republican Party is about anymore. It hasn't been for a long time. For at least the last 6 years. especially
such a
since
long
Trump
time.
came in.
4 years is not that a long time to go
Well,
through
it's not the same
those
party. I
rights.
used to be a Democrat. Do you know that, David?
But
You didn't hear me at the beginning, I don't
Let's-
think.
I
Can I
did,
interrupt
but
for a second?
yes.
All right.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to go back to what David said, because it's very important to not be Democrat or Republican for this conversation. It's about the power of big tech over censorship, because it just
Yes.
as well could have been the other way around. It could be Democrats being censored. So when you look at this, you have to come from a balanced perspective.
Right.
Absolutely.
Neither-
Absolutely.
And that's why I would think that David would understand, because one day it could turn around. And if they can censor one person, they can censor another person. There's no stopping to it.
I'm gonna first object highly to using tones like that, and I would think David would understand. I do
What?
understand.
Yeah.
I don't put, one of the things that I would like about this group is don't put your thoughts in my head or think what I'm thinking. I will tell you
Okay.
what I'm thinking.
Agreed.
Okay.
So
I agree.
do-
Okay, sorry about that.
Can I go back to my point?
Mhm.
My point is there are things, and you've all touched on them, that are generally considered illegal. Child pornography, most pornography. Selling drugs on the internet is technically illegal, although if you go on the dark web, you can buy guns, heroin, you can buy anything. But technically there are certain restrictions, moralities that are put in place that are not allowed on the internet. From there, big tech is a private company. They have stockholders, they have shareholders. Amazon Cloud Services has shareholders, as does Google and all the other companies. Do they have the right, because of their control basis, and they are a private company, should they be allowed by the United States government to have these censorship powers?
Why
Now-
would they censor anything that is not prohibited by the First Amendment?
The First Amendment is very limited in scope. I mean, you could say freedom of the speech, freedom of the press, freedom. They're all very tempered responses. They're much more limited than people think they are. Yeah, I cannot yell fire in a movie theater. I cannot. It's relegated to public area. I mean, freedom of. They're all they're easy slogans, but much greater. They have much more restraint than.
That's
than
why
people
I'm
realize.
limited to,
Far more than that.
should big tech be in control of censorship, or should that come from, I'll throw this out, a committee from the Senate and Congress that rules on what should be censored and what should not be censored, i.e. prostitution, illegal gambling, and all those things.
Political view should not be censored, period.
So how do we, solving the problem, fix the problem with big tech, not as a Republican or Democrat, because truly the tables can flip every 2 to 4 years or 6 years. So if we fix the problem, we have to fix it indiscriminate of what party we are in currently. Because like, I'll use the letter I said, she was a Democrat, now she's a Republican. Well, you surely don't want to make rules that could inflict pain on yourself, let alone everybody else. So how do we control big tech, or what safeguards have to be put in place for big tech to not censor or have the ability to censor political and religious views?
So I wanted to be a small historian. If you saw me typing, it was because there was something in the back of my mind that I will constantly use the refrain of Mark Twain of that history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. Because it reminded me of, and I'll read it in a second, the Apology for Printers from 1731. And there it goes back. I mean, once again, at those days, newspapers, pamphlets, or light magazines were the big tech of the day. That's how news moved. That's how advertising worked. That's how people stated their voices. And it was Benjamin Franklin's paper. And he wrote an apology for not taking advertising. And he was rejecting advertising, thus censoring people's businesses. And he kind of put out a little treatise back in 1731, kind of with the same point that we're making right now, of what is immoral, what is for the majority. I'll just read his last line from it, because it's kind of, it's longer, so let me, See, it's unreasonable to imagine printers approve of everything they print, and to censure them on a particular thing accordingly would be opposite. Printers not to print anything but what they approve. So I mean, he kind of goes back then and kind of says that as a printer, he could gain that control. So
I think what's different, I mean, newspapers back then were also private like they are now. Is that right? Or was there
they're private
without advertising and it was?
Always been private.
It's always been private. Right. So I think that's what's a little bit blurry because, you know, social media like Twitter and Facebook started as a platform to invite all different kinds of voices and perspectives, and it's changing its platform. I mean, I think Ted Cruz made this point. Are you a publisher or not? Because, you know, it's fine if you came out and said, we are, you know, a liberal leaning social media platform, and they stated that, then we'd all know where we stand. But I think it gets confusing when there seems to be picking and choosing, and yet they still go under the guise of, but we're for everyone. So I think that's why the 230, section 230 was trying to be passed, right? That was the whole operation for it.
and there's certain stuff that could be adjusted in 30, but I mean, so the issue is, the first question is, do Facebook, Twitter, where the big social media, do they cross the line beyond being a private company?
Yes, they do. That's my opinion.
But they sure are. I mean, they sure trade and act private. So, do we give them that power, or do we government control and constrain? And then, then it becomes
private companies that take the Section 230 exclusions off.
Censorship is illegal, and companies should be regulated not to do things that are illegal.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey, David.
Yeah.
Do you see, I mean, do you see any unfairness? Do you see, you said it was something in regards to violating their terms. Do you see any of that from your eyes? Do you see, hey, yeah, you know, conservatives look like they're being mistreated and their voices are being silenced, they don't have a platform? Do you see any of that, or do you?
I'll ignore. I'll answer it in two stages. One, on Parler, I don't know enough, and that's just the one that I can't say it's fair or not fair, because I really don't know what's on there or what's been said and the reasons why and how. So I'll ignore. I have to move away Parler because I can't tell you if that's fair or not fair.
Okay.
As far as on Facebook and Twitter, I'm generally against. I mean, I think it was the New York Post story that got delayed, and I thought that was
Hunter Biden.
Right. Exactly. And I thought that was, to me, that was rather ridiculous. Once again, I think when you start to highlight or control it, it only spreads more. So I wonder about doing more than less when doing censorship. There is a certain amount of, hey, is it being censored? I think there's a difference also being, is it being censored or is it being flagged as unknown or untrue? And I think those are two different things as well. There's a difference of being taken off versus an alert going, this has been proven false, where here's another opinion.
David, may I interrupt? You mentioned that the checking of the truth checking thing, the fact checking,
Right.
You know, you realize that the fact checkers, the companies that are fact checkers, are represented by only one side of the political agenda. And on top of that, those fact checkers are in large numbers of cases completely wrong. They actually mark things that are untrue that are completely true. And it just, you know, I don't think that social media, Twitter, Facebook, or either one need to even be in the position of fact checking, because then they're becoming, you know, a legal system, or they're becoming, again, censorship. It's just not something that they should be doing, because it's really became an opinion board rather than, you know.
Well, here, all right, let's step back. I mean, we could disagree about the fact checking, and there's ways to get around that. I mean, obviously, I'll be the first proponent to say, get to the source whenever you can. And as I like fact checkers who show me the source so you can see for yourself and highlight it. The flip side is when we go back 4 years ago to 2016, once again, I'll kind of raise Citizen United. We're spending money and misinformation that was being put out through social media. How do you control blatant misinformation, be it from foreign governments or information, which are trying to sway elections through misinformation if you can't censor?
Well, but David, this misinformation is not just from a 2016 election. Going way back to Jimmy Carter, there was misinformation. The whole spin is, the whole concept of spin is misinformation, right? Whether it's—
right. I was going to say, if we go back to Cain and Abel, right? It's just a—
Exactly. Spin is misinformation.
That's the whole idea of free speech. People are smart enough to understand and to learn.
We're smart enough to figure it out, and they're not allowing us to. And the fact checkers, who's the fact checker checking the fact checker, checking the fact checker, checking the fact checker? That chain will be insane. And is the fact checker somebody who is essentially Republican, or are they Democrat? Are they putting their own personal bias in?
If you really want to do fact checking, put in a bipartisan committee and have it run, you know?
No, I don't think that works either, because bipartisan committees all have their own spin.
You're already doing it, at least make it unbiased.
Take Section 230 today, the Telecommunications Act of 1996, protects those internet companies like Facebook, all of them. When they share information, they are not liable for the information that is being shared unless that information comes under a classification of lewd, pornography, those that are illegal. That 1996 rule, when the internet was really first starting, needs to be addressed differently today, 24 years later, a quarter of a century?
David,
Well,
go ahead, Danielle. Go ahead, Danielle.
So the rules need to change from what they were 25 years ago. And the only way to do that is not having independent Facebook people. It needs to be done by the government, just like lewd and lascivious behavior and pictures and child porn are not allowed on there. Guess what? The government has to step in and make other categories that are not considered socially acceptable.
But the irony is child porn is allowed on Twitter. There's a whole lawsuit right now.
Lawsuit is technically illegal.
Okay, so what I was going to say is the moment that Facebook and Twitter start to censor certain things, they are no longer they shouldn't be protected under this Section 230 anymore.
That is exactly what Ted Cruz says.
Exactly, and I agree with him on that. Because the moment they censor something, they're becoming like a publisher. They're choosing what can be on the internet and what can't. And you're not a publisher. You can't censor one person for saying one thing. And, you know, I mean, there's many people that are on Facebook that are, you know, from the Arab countries that say death to Jews. How come they allow that to be on there?
Right.
Why is that still on there?
So we keep coming back to the same argument about censorship versus what rights do private companies have if it's a private company.
So if they're not going to take that down, I don't think they have the right to take down. If I want to say, I feel that the election was you know, that a lot of it was stolen, that they, the machines, the Dominion machines, and you know, that if I want to believe that, that's my right. And if I want to post that, that's my right. And they have no right to take that down. They're censoring me if I do that, and that's not fair.
Yeah, basically it seems that they are choosing something and saying this incites violence and excusing 10 other things that are also inciting violence, but are not given equal weight. And
it's my opinion. And if I start the thing and I say, it's my opinion, they have no right to take it down.
All right, I'll go one side. If it's your opinion that it's okay to kill people, or, I mean, once again, we're moving a line.
You can't compare killing somebody to saying that a ballot was not real. It's one extreme to another. You know, you can't. It
Right, but I'm
doesn't. It
saying
doesn't
we're
make sense to me
but
what you're saying.
all right, so I scale back, you scale back, I scale back. We'll move the line, but there's still the line.
Okay, but I'm not hurting anybody by what I'm saying, and nobody's going to get hurt by what I'm saying. When you kill somebody, that's a death. That's a crime. If I'm saying, you know, my belief is that it was stolen. That's my belief, and I can believe whatever I want, and I can say it whenever I want to, and nobody should stop me. That's all.
But all right, then I'll get into libel and slander. You could believe that, but when you start saying Dave's an asshole, or Dave,
I didn't say that.
No, but I'm saying Dave stole things, or Dave did this fraudulently.
But I'm not doing that.
But if you're making that accusation against Dominion, you are.
No,
What if Dave is an asshole? And what if? And what if?
That's my opinion. If I think Dave's an asshole and I want to say it, I'm going to say it. But you know, that's not slander. I'm not like, you know.
Well, if you're saying a company's committing fraud, are you not responsible? Is there any accountability to make an accusation?
Yeah, there is a lot. It's been proven. It's been proven. The guy who actually created the program was testifying, and he testified that the machines, for every, let's say, 100 ballots that went in, a certain amount, no matter, you know, it just automatically went to Biden.
I'm going to ignore that as unproven and unfound, and I'll look to court cases.
But it was testified. They testified under oath with this.
I will go in, but I'll say my question is there accountability for speech, or can everybody make any claim they want against somebody?
Well,
What?
I think accountability should be on both sides. I'm totally okay with that. Hey, David, real quick. So if you personally were aware of unfair censorship of conservative voices, if you personally were aware of it, because it doesn't sound like you are, and, you know, to be honest with you, I don't have the exact proof, but if you were personally aware, how would you feel about that?
I think it's wrong. I mean, once again, I will say I'm making the argument to be the devil's advocate, but I'm generally against censorship. But I do think there's a certain accountability and stuff. I'll also say, Sean, that I have a strong belief that people are so sided that every side feels they're as wrong as the other side.
I agree with that. I've seen that personally. I agree with that 100%.
So it's hard to me saying one side's worse than the other. They've all probably been screwed.
Yeah, we made some common ground. He said it would be wrong. And that to me,
it goes back to what I said.
Made some common ground.
That's right.
Originally, I said, you can't pick that you're a Democrat or Republican. You have to look at the censorship subject, because it can turn either way.
It will 5 more times over the next 7 years.
Right. Right. And it will change. And then the other people are going to start screaming about censorship, and it's back and forth. But I still believe there has to be an overriding agency, not Facebook, just like we were talking about last week, when I said the quickest way to fix the police department is to take internal affairs, which is cops looking at cops, and taking it to an outside agency, which are not police. Okay. That's the first line of defense. And of course, everybody said the unions too. Well, this is the same kind of thing.
We're kind of like a new FCC.
Sort of like a new FCC, or a division of the FCC, whereby they determine what is and is not censorship. Because right now you've got Facebook police in Facebook.
Yeah, actually,
Twitter police in Twitter. Well, guess what? It doesn't work in the police department having internal affairs fix the problem. Why do you think it's going to work having internal people in Twitter and Facebook?
Yes.
The FCC needs to have a department that oversees all censorship.
Because this is where we're at. And I don't know if you guys saw this week, but this is Facebook Supreme Court that has the power to overrule Mark Zuckerberg just handed down their first decisions. And even Mark Zuckerberg was saying, we have too much power. He doesn't even know the answers.
What?
You know?
I'll give him the answer.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I do think that, you know,
I am much less concerned with Facebook censorship than I am with Facebook privacy.
Oh, that's a whole nother subject.
Whole other.
Excellent subject, David. Excellent.
Yeah, you said stay on point, David. Stay on point.
That's another week's.
You know that Facebook follows all of the other apps outside of Facebook.
Mhm.
WhatsApp, yeah, all of them.
No, not just WhatsApp. Facebook actually follows every other apps that you have installed in your.
Although Apple is doing something about that. It's my understanding that their new iPhone features, it comes as it's already disabled. So Facebook
Yes,
can.
you guys need to actually disable it. David, did you disable that?
I would
Yes.
say as a unity moment, we could all be for more privacy.
Amen.
Yes, amen to that. But you know, Daniela,
Facebook tracking outside.
I don't know if they all realize what time it is here.
Oh, okay. Do you have to step out? Yes, because
I'm gonna step out. I'm so tired. I've had a long day. We've been running around all day.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted.
Well, we love that you joined us
Absolutely.
and contributed to the conversation.
Thank you.
Because your voice is, trust me, of many voices in this country.
Thank you.
And we're leaving on a unifying note that big tech has way too much of our private information.
I agree 100%.
Before we leave, I'll
Yeah.
just take 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Do you remember, and I think it was, when did they start rating movies and then albums? Music. I should say
wasn't that Gore? Not Gore. No, it
What
was
do you mean?
Bob Dole. Wasn't it like Tippy Dole or something? Or
No, it was something like that, where everybody, the censorship thing, and they had a rating of G, PG, R, and then they had on music.
video games. I remember video games was
Video
in like
games had
92,
it.
93.
Video games, right? Do we need to do
ESRB.
that on all the social media?
Maybe. That may be good.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
What was your point with that, Mark? That
All right. So good night, guys.
Okay, good night, Iris. We will wrap up
Good
with
night,
that.
Iris.
Thank
The
you so
government
much
went in
for
and did
coming.
that. The government
Next week. Again.
certain classifications, and maybe they have to go in, and the FCC needs to have a committee on censorship rules.
How do we all feel about that?
Better than what's going on right now.
He's right.
Okay, so when I run in 2024, assuming Trump doesn't run, okay, then you'll
Or
know.
Ron DeSantis doesn't run, or Ted Cruz.
That's right.
You can run as his VP.
Exactly.
We got to throw Nikki Haley there too.
Let's
But okay,
go back to the privacy thing. I hope that all of you disabled because there is a setting saying how Facebook deals with apps outside of the Facebook app. That includes every single app in your phone.
Right.
And there's the settings that is buried very, very deep in 2 settings menus to
Are
actually
you talking about the iPhone or an Android?
every phone, Android or Apple, that Facebook app is installed on is
Dang.
spying on you throughout all of the apps installed unless you disable that feature inside Facebook.
Is that with artificial intelligence?
I don't know. You just go to the Facebook settings, and then you go to settings again, and you go to privacy and something in privacy, and in the very, very, very deep bottom there is how does Facebook treats outside of Facebook apps, and you have to disable that because if not, they track everything you do in your phone.
So you go to Facebook and do this. It's not something you do on your phone. You actually go to Facebook.
It's a Facebook app feature. When you install
Facebook app
and you
feature.
accept their terms,
Mhm.
built in with that acceptance of terms, that they can actually read everything that you do on your phone.
No way.
Install the app. And
No way.
that feature comes turned on automatically when you install the Facebook. So
Dude.
it's crazy.
So Yuval, if you're able to do a screen recording and actually go through this on your phone to show us where to go,
I can
I can put it in the description of this show for everyone to see.
So there is a video that I send people that shows how to turn it off.
Okay.
And I will send it to you via Telegram, okay?
Yeah. Send it to me the Telegram, and then when I post this episode, I will include it in the description link.
Okay.
But everyone can have it now in the meantime, because he's going to put in. Actually, can you put it in the chat? Yuval, in case someone wants to grab it here?
I have to find the.
So, as I was painfully trying to remember Benjamin Franklin, that's where the his censorship on advertising is.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Okay, so let's kind of summarize where we're at. And obviously, we are just getting started. There's so many directions we can go because there's so much to talk about. And we really have been deprived, I think, as a nation to have these conversations together. And David, you know, I hope you felt respected and you've held your own. I know, you know, you are taking it for the team in many ways, but I hope this was a positive experience for you. And I loved hearing your point of view. And I think you've made a lot of valid points that we agree with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, as you can see in the arguments, it's so easy to get tangential. I mean, and to move from, you throw in Maxine Waters, where you throw in this, but you really have to stay focused to the small point, because everything's outrageous, but they're outrageous for different reasons. So it's hard to cure one when you're trying to solve the world. You got to start with the drop.
Once you get stuck, David, and I concur with David 100%, it's hard for me to believe that I concur with him 100% tonight.
See what's happening? Miracles.
Wait, we had a Jewish holiday last week. We don't even have one this week for this moment.
Once you stay on target for
the gong when there's that moment. Okay.
Exactly. For the subject matter at hand, and you stay on that point, you don't need to bring in the Republican, the Democrat, the Libertarian. You're trying to fix a problem that pervades society today.
Yeah.
Irrelevant of what religious or political persuasion you have.
Yeah. And Sean really.
And it often even moves past.
Yes.
It moves past the players also when you get to privacy versus censorship. I mean, you could really distill down to the root of what the issue is. And usually you'll find that it's been a topic that's been debated for centuries.
So do we need HIPAA rules for privacy?
I mean, I think we're headed there.
There's a subject for one night.
That's a subject for one night. Yeah, because, well, I mean, if you saw the documentary, The Social Dilemma, where everything just gets converted to consumer data. That's definitely something that affects all of us. And I think we can agree that, I mean, even they don't even know what the answer is. Their own kids are not on these platforms. So it's we're in new territory. So we need new support since we are in uncharted territory. And I don't think it's a contradiction when people who come from a conservative point of view would like government involvement. It's because it's affecting everyone, and we want everyone to feel that being abiding by the same standards, because things can flip the pendulum flips continuously. We need continuity with this new territory. Is that something we can all agree on?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And I just wanted to point out, I love how Sean brought it back to the human story. Asking David, okay, regardless, if you knew of someone that this was happening to, who you didn't agree with politically, how would you feel? And he immediately said, I would feel it's also wrong. And I think that's what we're missing today. We don't hear the human story from different, underneath the political affiliations. So I loved that moment. Yuval, did you have any input on today's episode?
Thank you for being open and coming over. I hope that we haven't been too hostile.
Not at all. I will say,
yes.
And I don't mind being pushed whatsoever, because I think you only really question what you think and move past the points when you get pushed. And once again, this moves out of the bubble, in the sense that if you just keep saying that you won't grow or get farther or go anywhere if you think you know it.
David, do you watch any conservative media?
Yeah, a bunch actually.
What do you watch?
I usually, on my way to work, I usually watch a little bit of Fox. And then I get emails where I check out the Daily Caller or Epic News. And I tend to get, I'm well on everybody's email chain. So I'm of every possible on all sides. I don't know how that happened, to be honest, but that's kind of where I get it.
This, what you're describing is what used to be the political agenda across the board, meaning everybody was kind of more centric, everybody was listening and reviewing everybody else's designated media. I used to watch CNN and MSNBC like every day, regularly.
And NPR?
And they became so biased, so one-sided, that I just lost my faith, I couldn't, I didn't feel like I'm getting the story, and I stopped watching them.
Same with me. I used to watch CNN every day, all day until the election, and then they got it so wrong. And then after that, it was just so obvious. But I only watch CNN.
I still watch a bunch of CNN. I can't remember the last time I watched MSNBC. It's got to be a long time.
That's saying a lot.
I tend to like, have you ever listened? I mean, one of my favorite things that was new is Smirconish on POTUS.
Yes.
I really like the POTUS channel. And Chris Cuomo, I would say, used to be. He's kind of moved over the last year. But what I find interesting, they're both lawyers, so they go really after that evidentiary reasoning.
Point. Mark and Sean, where do you get your news now?
To be honest with you, I kind of had to block out a lot of my news. It was bothering me. That's the reason why I'm at a health retreat down in San Diego. I had to, it was just too much, and I was thinking about it all night. I'd wake up in the morning. I wasn't even getting a lot of work done. And it was just, it was so consuming, and it was just a lot of negativity. And, but I was, so I had to detach from that. I actually got a lot of work done. I actually broke a personal sales record just by tuning out the news for 2 weeks solid. No social media, no news. I was just able to focus on work and my family, and it worked out good. But I haven't been really watching much. I was watching Newsmax after the whole Kayleigh McEnany and all that stuff. And but even Newsmax just recently, I don't know. I don't know.
I just wish there was like a network where there was representation, where there were hired conservatives, hired liberals, where it felt safe. It felt safe to feel represented and get your information. And unfortunately, I don't think there is that today.
There is no news. It's all opinion. There's no news.
Yeah.
What I've been doing a lot lately is when I'm in the car, I try to turn it off at home because I have things to do other than be totally aggravated with politics. Is when I listen to POTUS on Sirius. I do listen to BBC. I do listen to, on a shortwave radio I have at home, I listen to other, offshore radio stations just to hear something other than the same crap from the left and from the right.
We can agree to that. So anyway,
hey, quick question for David. David, you said Fox News, that was your conservative outlet?
That's one of them, yeah.
Okay. Any others?
Like I said, the rest I don't watch. I kind of read Epic. I kind of look on the Daily Caller. I kind of go through more of the emails and kind of check what the stories are.
Okay.
Yeah, and
the single greatest thing Donald Trump did for America?
He brought back all the Democrats.
175 million people for the first time are paying attention to politics.
True.
Most of the time,
the other side.
America didn't give a shit, and it was business as usual. And all of a sudden, there's 175 million people paying attention.
Mark, I never voted in my life. I never thought my vote counted. I voted for the first time in 2016 for Trump, and I voted again. Only 2 times I ever voted in my life.
I rest my case.
Different elections, though. Make sure you say in different elections you voted.
How many civics lessons?
Get canceled.
How many civics lessons have we all had in the past 2 to 4 years? Way more than I ever learned in school.
Yeah. we've had the biggest voter turnout in history on both sides.
Because Trump did the best thing for this country. Even my daughter at 8 understands politics. Now, my son went to school, a Republican college, and he was doing great. And then somehow in college, he became a dumbass, turned Democrat, and voted for Biden.
Good job, Dad.
I want to end the call before we open up anything else.
No, I was just being funny.
Talk about how liberal. But yeah, this guys, I don't know about you, but this really feels great. I feel like we need more of this. It's about being a part of the solution and not amplifying the problem. And I think also it would be helpful if we can recommend different podcasts or different outlets that we think would be helpful that are not the echo chambers. But like David, for example, I think, I would love to hear your thoughts on like a Ben Shapiro episode on a certain subject, because he's,
I've listened to him a bunch of times.
Yeah. And vice versa. If there's something that you think that could, give many of us an insight that we're not getting from the media that can, that makes really valid points, I would be open to learning more too. So.
A very good one on YouTube would be Teamcast.
Okay.
What is it?
Teamcast. It's
Okay.
Teamcast IL. Is basically not really affiliated. I mean, he didn't vote for Trump. He didn't affiliate himself with any party. Is really just decent, honest, present both sides, bring guests from both sides, and he has just policy-based opinions. Some, like any centric person that basically just has an opinion per policy and not, as a general agenda of a full, party.
Can you put his name, Yuval, also in the link? I'm happy to promote him. So everyone else, after they hear this call, can go check him out too. And this is how we get more informed about more balanced outlets. So I'm gonna end the call right now. You guys can hang out a little bit longer if you'd like, but thank you so much for joining.
I have one question.
Yes.
What do I have in common with the moderator?
Okay, well, we're gonna say that off the air.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So anyway, until next episode, we do them Wednesdays at 7, and then they are recorded and shared the following week. So our last week's episode is now was live streamed tonight on YouTube and my Facebook. You can go check it out. And then this week's episode will be for next week. So until next time, guys, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having
Thanks,
me.
Daniella. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Danielle. Thanks, guys. Nice meeting you guys.
You
Okay.
too.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of America's Voices. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss a future episode. If you would like to be a part of the conversation, we'd love to have you. Visit daniellabloom.com/America's Voices and join in the conversation. God bless you and God bless America.